parts. I've never done whole parts.
Oh, they take little tiny pieces. There won't even be a scar.
I think I found the problem.
Oh, come on, you're the doctor. Everyone, lights out and quiet.
I just started eating right as we're recording.
Immediately start crinkling. Welcome back to the Media Morgue, everyone, where movies come to be examined. I'm Justin, alongside my surgeons of cinema.
I'm Danny.
I'm Zack.
I'm Wes.
Each episode, we review two movies, one that's popular, either by release date or general knowledge, and one that's a little more obscure, and try to find a connecting thread so that you, dear listener, feel braver about broadening your cinematic horizons. But before the reviews, we have some news. So we obviously are four hosts, and we each brought a specific topic to talk about today. I'm going to go to Danny first.
Well, for lack of anything better to talk about, there was just like a clip from the new Ghostbusters movie.
That shit was terrifying.
Where Paul Rudd fights the little Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. There's not much to say. I mean, the movie seems to be a step up in terms of reboots from that one that everybody already forgot about with the SNL ladies, which I can't speak on its quality, considering I haven't seen it. But this one's got all the boys back. Or no, you know what? Actually, it's only, I think, Bill Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Moranis got punched recently, and I think he has a cameo in this one. I don't know, but there was a video recently of him getting punched.
He got assaulted. Yeah.
Oh God.
He ran up to him. He was like, "Are you Rick Les Anus?" He's like, "No, I'm the other one. I'm Rick Moranis. I'm Moranis," but he was already million.
Oh yeah.
Popeye the Sailor Man cartoon.
I actually thought that Ghostbusters movie with Melissa McCarthy wasn't horrible. I didn't think it was that bad, but I feel like the reason why it's become such a thing, this would have just been another.
When people talk about Ghostbusters, they're not talking about a franchise or a series. Yeah. They're talking about one movie,
but
a bunch of comedians from the mid '80s.
But the issue is that it didn't have to be a thing.
Yeah.
People were lukewarm on the Melissa McCarthy movie, and that's fine. But I feel like when this one was announced, people were like, "Oh, finally, Ghostbusters is back in good hands." I'm like, it's just boys again. it's just dudes.
Yeah.
But it looks pretty.
I just don't like that it's a series, because after the original movie, what point is there in watching the cartoons or the other movies?
Once Reagan died, what reason to watch Ghostbusters?
Well, that first one is genuinely funny and has original ideas and stuff. I just never got trying to franchise that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a good concept.
Similar to Jurassic Park, right? In the sense that one good movie came out and then they said, we could probably stretch this, right? And then
I do love that third movie, though. I do. I hold the third movie close to my heart.
That was
I haven't seen it.
I was in theaters.
Do you remember when he's having that dream and he sees a little velociraptor?
The raptor is speaking.
Yes. Zack, sir.
Yes. I have the mainstream trailer with Andrew Garfield, Maya Hawke, and Nat Wolff just lurking in corners in different shots of the movie.
Don't forget Jake Paul, dude.
Yes.
Jake Paul, I didn't even catch that. You told me that just a second ago that Jake Paul.
Zach, you know what's crazy about this trailer, or wild about this trailer, is I feel like Andrew Garfield was playing Jake Paul, and then Jake Paul shows up. And I was like, what's going on? Isn't this who this is supposed to be?
Yeah, it came out, I guess, last year at the Venice Film Festival, and it had people walking out of the theater because of how bad and uncomfortable it was.
I watched.
Zach, it was bad and uncomfortable?
Yeah, believe it or not, this movie was so bad and uncomfortable, people walked out.
Damn.
Well, he probably wouldn't allow them to really criticize him, or he wouldn't agree to do something that didn't make him look epic.
Yeah, I can't tell what Paul's role is in it.
Day,
in the trailer, in the trailer he shows up for half a second, and it looks like it's during some sort of I don't know what you call it, focus group type of situation. I don't know if he's a producer behind it, but it seems to be some sort of story about an influencer that gets picked up. If it's
not
Andrew Garfield looks great.
influencers, I doubt it would do very well. It needs to be like a cutting like commentary on the culture of like being an Instagram influencer. That's the only way to make
Right.
a good movie. If you're like not really going hard on that, then then influencers would agree to do it, which is the plus side. But the downside is the movie's gonna just not live up to its potential.
I don't trust the Coppola to make any kind of critique of
Is it
rich
Sofia
people.
Coppola?
It's Gia Coppola.
Oh.
It's Gia, yeah.
Which one is Gia? Is that the sister? Is that a daughter?
I think it's Francis Ford's niece, I believe.
Niece. Okay. Wow. Well,
Let's get 'em out there.
The roots run deep, apparently.
There's some Coppolas just in the wild. Have you ever thought about
There's a
that?
lot of Coppolas in a cage.
Just
Nicolas Cage.
just Coppola's running around.
Yeah, right. Nick Cage is related to them, right? He's the nephew.
He's
not know
another
that.
nephew. Yeah, he changed his
it's
name so
something like
people
that.
wouldn't give him jobs just for being a Coppola instead of being a crazy person, which they do now. So, Zach, are you going to watch it?
I like Andrew Garfield a lot. But God, it just doesn't sound appealing when people walk out of theaters. Although, on the other hand, it does, right? Like you want to see what made them walk out. So maybe it's an acting study, on Andrew Garfield, seeing what he's been up to. How
That's my thing. Whenever something is like controversial, it always piques my interest. What don't they want to see?
exactly. So it might be morbid curiosity, if only that.
Cool. It'll be on the media morgue, I'm sure, because one of us will watch it
Absolutely.
and then force the other.
Wes, what's up with
The Long Halloween, everybody. The Long Halloween is arriving.
But
So-
not how you remember it.
Not how you remember. So here's the weird thing about this story, and Zach, you can like quarterback on this because I know you're also a fan of these
Absolutely.
movies. So Long Halloween is a 12-issue Batman story in the comics that is essentially the definitive young Batman story. Like there's year one and then Long Halloween. It comes like
It
chronologically.
has like
after.
the whole ensemble of
It has all the villains. It's by Jeff
Solomon
Loeb and Tim
Grundy.
Sale. The Solomon Grundy issue is my
that's
favorite.
that's my favorite. Yeah.
But so it's been used as a template for the Nolan movies. It was used as a template. Allegedly, it's going to be the template for the Matt Reeves movie.
It's the definitive like Harvey Dent.
It is. It's the new Harvey Dent origin. It's the burn face thing. Or acid in the face in court, I think is how it goes.
Right.
But it was the basis for Nolan's movies. It was the basis. It's going to be the basis for Reeves' movie. But we've never gotten a straight up adaptation.
Is the Riddler just going to be Holiday? He's going to be going around killing people.
Well, that's the
tattoos
thing.
and stuff?
Well, that's the thing. I think the Matt Reeves movie is combining Riddler with Hush. It seems like that's what's going to be happening. But this is going to be just an adaptation of the comic, and it's in two parts. And I believe Jensen Ackles is Batman, and
Timber's favorite man.
and Naya Rivera, rest in peace, is Catwoman. Which is
Oh
really sad.
yeah.
Zach, what did you think about this trailer?
I really liked it. I'm a big fan of the DC animated movies. I mean, like everybody is if you've watched them. And I just one of the most recent ones I saw actually was Batman Hush. And spoiler, I guess, if you want to see this movie, but they do they. How do I say this? Like I'm just going right to like what the what? No, let's cut this out. Let's cut this out. Anyway, I liked it a lot. Huh?
Great. Oh, what did you think?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was great. I watched it a while ago, and I'm always a fan of seeing Batman doing his thing. The Joker's there. Of course, the Joker's there. We love the Joker. He's part of it. Yep.
Are you familiar with the story, Zach? The
Uh,
graphic novel on Halloween?
No, not really. But I
I highly recommend it. I finally read it like a year, maybe 2 years ago, around like Batman Day. It was all that fanfare. Yeah, I think Batman turned like 70 or like 75 or something.
He's an old man.
Yeah.
So all the famous stories were in circulation again. It's really unexpected and very surprising. Even if you think you know where it's going because of like the Nolan movies and how they adapt to the Harvey Dent stuff, it still has a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
My main gripe is that these animated movies just kind of all look.
They just toss out the art style.
They're homogenous, They don't. I mean, if they adapted a Serious House on Serious Earth, the Batman story, it would be animated the same way.
Yeah, I would.
And that story's so famous because its artwork is so like trippy.
Yeah.
It looks like a Salvador Dali.
I think it's
painting.
the David. Oh man, what's his name? David McLean or something like that. But I agree with you. I think the issue with the DC movies, and Zach, you can chime in on this, is I feel like they've gotten into this continuity thing where everything in the same continuity has to have the same art style. And I think when it first started, they would at least try to ape the art style of the artist. Yeah. And now they're just like, we just need you to know that Batman and Superman are in the same town visually.
Yeah.
Killing Joke was when I realized that they were just doing really pedestrian animating. Like it looks the same as like the animated series from the 90s, which is fine, but like these stories are so larger than life, and when people like demand that they adapt them and you just do like $20 like cheap animation, that's hyperbole obviously, but it is kind of a letdown because that story in particular deserves so much more.
Yeah, and the long years and stuff. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I mean, from what I saw or what I've seen of the art of The Long Halloween, the Joker just looks like a nightmare. Like his teeth.
Yeah, he's like a Slender Man.
That's my favorite.
So to not
Lemony Snicket illustration from Series of Unfortunate Events.
Yeah, and to not capitalize on that look for this movie, I think is a mistake. That's such a staple.
And granted, like I mean, that art style is so unique and it's so like potent that I mean, turning it into motion might be different. I'm not an animator, so far be it from me to say, but like there's so much going on to like have that moving all the time is probably a lot of work, even if it's digital. So I could also see a reason why they might have filed it down to something more like Danny was saying, homogenous. But Long Halloween's my favorite Batman story. So I am looking forward to this adaptation.
Maybe they'll show it in theaters, like the Killing Joke.
That'd be dope.
That'd be kind of sick. They showed the Killing Joke that adaptation in theaters.
They did.
Yeah. Well, this is part one of the, and I don't know how many parts they'll do. Maybe like 3, like 4 books per movie, or 4 for 3.
That'd be cool. The last thing I'll say about this before we move on is I think I wasn't sure how to feel about Jensen Ackles. With these movies, sometimes you get a really good voice actor, and sometimes you just get like a fine voice actor. He sounds real good. He doesn't sound like Red Hood
himself.
Yeah, he doesn't even sound like himself, which is great.
I was surprised. Like, I know that for the most part, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are done as these characters. It takes a fat check to get them out of their seats. Well, I mean,
he can't even try and sound like he did pre-Joker anymore. It's like so like
no, it's crazy. But and it is a young man's game. And then you have, but luckily, Troy Baker is the best
ever
at it. I mean, if at doing that particular version of the Joker's voice, he's untouchable. So I'm looking forward to it. My bit of news before we move on here is that recently the CW picked up a reimagining or an adaptation of the 1970s David Carradine led Kung Fu series. Reason I wanted to talk about this is because anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee. And back in the 70s, he actually developed a concept for something called The Warrior, which was recently adapted into Warrior on Cinemax and then purchased by HBO Max. Pretty good show. I recommend it. But there is some contention as to whether or not his original concept was retooled into what became Kung Fu with David Carradine, and that he wasn't credited for it. One of the reasons he wasn't cast, because he had an idea about setting a Kung Fu adventure in the West, and he wanted to be Western because he's like, that's the only way you can justify people fighting each other. Eventually, what kind of happened was executives didn't think they could make a star out of a 5'6" Chinese man.
Right.
Little did they know. And this is before, like, he was like 5'6". Yeah, he wasn't that tall, 5'7", and 140 something pounds. But this is before Enter the Dragon as well. So like, he's kind of he's not a star yet. And then by the time Enter the Dragon comes out, he's already dead.
So is this before Green Hornet, or is this during Green Hornet?
No, it was after Green Hornet. It's like the transition from Green Hornet into Longstreet. And then like when he actually only starts making his movies when he goes to China, because in China, the success of the Green Hornet made him a star, because they thought he was the guy. They thought like, well, I don't know about that white dude. It's the Kato show. Yeah. Literally, they called it the Kato show in Japan. He eventually, he made Big Boss and Way of the Dragon, all that, and then Enter the Dragon. But by the time Enter the Dragon came out, like it was a few months after his death, and then Game of Death was the first like posthumous in terms of they only started filming some of it, and then they had to complete it with like body doubles and
yeah.
stuff, and that and then that happened. Similar to what happened with his son Brandon in The Crow, which I also haven't seen.
tragedy
That
just
might make it on the show.
follows that family everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah. So, but this show, it follows an Asian woman, and she is kind of taking the reins for, I think, I assume the David Carradine-ish character. Yeah, I mean, it's on the CW, so that's
Take it
not
with
the
a grain of
greatest
salt.
sign.
It's on the CW. Just don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, but I think conceptually, I mean, listen, Warrior is really good. I think it honored the Bruce Lee legacy, and I don't know if it's going to continue. There's a lot of people who want it to be want it to be saved. We'll see if that happens, but I do think that it's a good show. I would recommend it. With Kung Fu, it kind of seems like it could be, I don't know, a little extraneous, but what do you guys think about the concept if you got to look into it at all before
I'll
recording?
definitely give it a shot.
I mean, with
piqued my interest.
with the CW, you'll get maybe a really good first season.
Mhm.
And like the Flash has a great first season, and then you're like, this is okay for the rest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think even Riverdale like has a pretty solid first season. So I think we'll get a good one season out of this.
Yikes! Just caught Wes on tape admitting to
I
watching
do.
Riverdale.
I'm a fan of the Archie comics. What do you want me? Have you guys read?
The Twin Peaks.
It does.
It's got
It does.
Cheryl and Fenn.
And it has a
It's got a Bates Motel. I think Bates Motel is directly responsible for the green lighting of Riverdale.
That's probably
because it's got like that same like West Coast crime drama thing.
And then
going
I
on.
meant Matchkin Amick, not Cheryl and Fenn. Sorry, I'll cut that out.
I mean, I don't know. I'm excited for any Bruce Lee material because we have so little of it. Like I remember I watched that terrible Bruce Lee biopic that came out a couple years ago about him challenging.
Yes,
but it was really about the white guy that both. Like, it had like Billy Magnuson in it. I remember, and
it was about him and his love story. It was. I didn't see it.
Don't watch it. It's bad. But I think anything with Bruce Lee, I'm excited to see. But like, or anything related to Bruce Lee is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then there was that part from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that was really controversial.
Oh boy!
And Tarantino kept doubling down and saying he was like a pompous asshole and stuff when people were criticizing him.
Which
but it's also a dream, so like I can understand both sides of the argument. You know, Brad Pitt would probably be remembering him as a douchebag because they got that fight.
I beg of you to never any of you pick Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm hoping we can actually keep QT out of this show as much as possible. The first time one of you like brings on a QT movie is when Media Morgue dies.
I think the only one we would be able to do
I actually love
is Death Proof.
I do. Glorious Bastards is very good.
Or that. But I mean, in terms of something that like people don't know from Quentin Tarantino, Death Proof would probably be the one.
The entirety of Grindhouse. Grindhouse is one movie that's like two features. It's Death Proof and Planet Terror, and a bunch of like fake trailers from like Rob Zombie and Guillermo del Toro and
Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, Robert Rodriguez.
What were you saying, Justin? I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No. I mean, well, no, it's fine. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Bruce Lee content is unfortunately very scarce. I mean, another interesting note: they did a follow-up series to the original Kung Fu. It was called The Legend Continues, and Brandon Lee was actually in it. He was the main. Really? I think he was the main character, and he was searching for his long lost father, who wound up being David Carradine. But then it's meta because like that role was supposed to be Bruce or could have been Bruce, you know. And I mean, they got away with it because. David Carradine's character is a white man abandoned by his American father in China, or not abandoned, but I think his father dies or something, and so he's not supposed to be an Asian person.
Carradine's dead.
Carradine died. Yeah, he died a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of Quentin Tarantino, you know, he was Bill in Kill Bill. So that's another kind of tidbit. But yeah, I mean. I would just say, honestly, I'll see what the pilot is looking like, but I think like just watch Warrior because that's going to give you the most, the closest to what, I mean, as far as I know, what his vision was. And besides, it's produced by his daughter. You know, she has a direct connection to it. So
cool.
Yeah. Well, we'll take our first break of the episode and then we'll come back to talk about Christopher Nolan's newest Men in
Oh
Men in
Suits.
Suits.
God.
The bullet moved backwards. The bullet moved backwards. Oh my god.
All right, so welcome back. Hopefully you got yourselves some snacks. We're moving into our consensus choice of the day, Christopher Nolan's 2021 release, Tenet.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we have a lot to say about it.
Here we are.
Yeah. This is a movie about guys in suits who give a lot of exposition and tell you what time travel is and how it works. And in the end, they fight a guy in a boat.
Yeah,
So that's Tenet.
pretty much.
I thought this movie was, you know what? I like it less than when I saw it. I saw it in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX, which means I didn't have the luxury of subtitles. So for like maybe 30% of the movie, I couldn't really tell what they were even like talking about.
Only 30%.
Well, like most of it, I was like pretty, enamored by like the spectacle of a Nolan movie in IMAX. I mean, he shoots these things in like 70 millimeter. Sometimes, like the theater where I saw it, they were actually showing the print. Me and Justin saw Dunkirk, and they were showing the IMAX, like the print, like the actual 70 millimeter print. So that's cool. I mean, like the spectacle of that is great. He really loves doing shit the old way, which I can respect. But then, like, the movie didn't really stick with me, and there's so much that I think is like unimportant. And the parts that work do really work, but it's a bit too long, too like needlessly confusing, which is like how he's characterizing the back half of his career, just doing stuff that's like way too confusing, like unnecessarily. So that's where I'm at with Tenet right now. I don't hate it.
Yeah. So I was kind of obliterated by Tenet. I went into it a little bit cocky, thinking that I'd maybe walk away from this understanding it than most people. And I don't know why I thought that. I'm no smarter than anybody else. But it destroyed me. And it made Inception and Interstellar for me look like hand-fed Dora the Explorer episodes. I instantly, within 10 minutes of watching the movie, I got a headache. A real migraine watching the film, trying to keep up with it.
He's really over the years like leaned into trying to be as confusing as he can.
Yeah,
and what that does for him.
And I appreciate that Nolan doesn't want to assume that his audience is stupid. Like, he actually wants to assume that his audience is always keeping up with him, which is why he has these rushed, quiet conversations and then moves on. But I think he went too far this time.
What if it's the opposite? What if it's like, I missed so much that the movie has to be good and I just didn't get it,
Right. Well, there is that line where one of I think Barbara, the scientist, says, don't try to understand it, just feel it. And that is Nolan's plea to the audience to not destroy him for this mess and masterpiece that he has created.
Masterpiece.
So I think I liked it. I don't really know. I grasped about 10% of the skeleton of the plot. And I really loved the idea conceptually. I thought it was fun. So that's kind of that's
the actual like reverse segments where the world is in reverse and he's stepping in a puddle in reverse and birds are flying up by in reverse. Like that's all great. Like that's where the movie really shines. That and the protagonist's relationship with Pattinson. And I'm not saying protagonist is like a substitute for his name. That's his name.
That is his literal name.
That is his name.
Which, strike one.
Strike one.
Wes?
Yeah. So I saw this movie twice because I like torturing myself. No, I saw it twice because I promised 2 sets of people I'd watch it with them, and I was a bad planner. It was a bad thing on my part. I don't know. I don't think Christopher Nolan cares about human beings. And I know that sounds like messed up, but I actually don't think he's interested in humans. Like human relationships, people, romance. Like that's just not interesting to him. He is like,
cold movies.
Just cold. Yeah. And that's cool, man. Like Kubrick makes cold movies. Cold. But also Kubrick always seemed interested in people, even if they
Even
were
if
going
it was
crazy.
just like domestic disputes.
Yeah, he
he's
seems
still-
interested.
Yeah.
And Nolan does, and this is not a knock. Like this is just
Nolan
the kind of
is a
filmmaking.
sexless filmmaker. He's very
That
sterile.
too.
But
There's never like.
there's
he
no
never
there's
gets
no
his hands too
but
dirty.
but that's like, this is not a criticism. Like I'm framing it as a criticism because it's not what I like in film. But like, it's a type of filmmaking, and I think for all the action, I think the backwards fighting is great. I think I think
It
Pattinson
looks
does.
kind of goofy. But
Pattinson is great. I think
he's very
I think
good.
Elizabeth Debicki, my tall wife, is great.
She likes
but
6'5".
she's like 6'4",
She's
and she acts her behind off. But like,
I'll be honest, I couldn't really like her husband trying to
You mean
intimidate her and
Kenneth
stuff.
Branagh?
Like, yeah,
the greatest living actor,
yes,
Kenneth Branagh.
of course. Him like trying to intimidate her didn't really work for me. Like she could step on him.
Kenneth Branagh, by the way, who has never looked more like Sean Bean in his career than he does in this movie.
No, but I think the film. I like the concept of the film better than I like the film. I like the idea that he's making a time travel movie. He's clearly interested in time travel.
Correct.
It's a really dope take on time travel.
And
The
it's
idea
time
that you're
travel
moving
done in a way that we haven't seen.
time travel where
manipulation.
you're pushing backwards through time, which is cool. I just wish Nolan cared about human beings, because that would make his movies significantly more enjoyable for me. That's what I like.
No, it's like to your point, it's almost like watching a time travel movie where you see the process of traveling rather than just getting to the destination, the temporal destination, which is interesting. Yeah. To Wes's point, and I said this to you yesterday, I think that Nolan's concepts are his characters. And I think that Tenet is kind of the most egregious example of when the concept takes precedent, because there's really no story. Like, and we'll get into it, but I think that the linchpin is reverse entropy as a concept, which like none of us are scientists, so we're not even going to go near that as far as whether or not it makes sense. But it does what it needs. If the movie says it makes sense, it makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like, because that's what the movie
Apparently
needs.
he
in
made
order
like
to...
Interstellar like science proof.
He used the same physicist for this as interesting.
Yes, but I think I did see an excerpt of him saying like, we're not going to make any sort of argument that this is scientifically accurate.
Threw himself at the mercy.
I think you make a case that he's kind of the most funded independent filmmaker next to like maybe Wes Anderson, but probably even more.
Like Tarantino, yeah.
Yeah. So you can definitely see
the same weight behind him as like a franchise does.
Absolutely.
There's
That's why he
very
makes so
few
much money. And part of
Oscars
that is because of the Batman. I think the Batman trilogy upped his mainstream notoriety, but then like now people are like, oh, like you want to see something mind bending, like go to a Nolan movie. But yeah, I don't know if he's trying to like outdo himself.
Yes.
Each movie, because he definitely seems to be. And in a way, this movie is very similar. I haven't seen Interstellar, but I have seen Inception, Memento, Prestige, and this movie is similar to at least Inception and Memento, just with a new kind of, with some new people in it and some different ideas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean those are some of my primary thoughts, and we'll get into more details as Zach, you take us through the plot summary. So spoiler alert now. We're dropping it officially. If you want to see Tenet, go spend 2.5 hours doing that. Then come back.
Is really a girl? No, all right. Now this is the warning.
Zach,
Last warning. Final warning.
Zach, is the Wikipedia article written backwards?
It is. It actually is written forwards, and then everything is written backwards after it immediately.
I see.
Either way. All right, let's go through the Wikipedia, and we'll try to make as much sense of this as possible. And it's not going to really work. All right, so let's begin. A CIA agent, the protagonist, that's John David Washington, participates in an extraction operation in a Kiev opera house. A masked soldier wearing a red trinket saves his life by unfiring a bullet through a gunman. And you've lost me already.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's hold.
Let's cut it.
Can I just say, Denzel? I'm not gonna be disrespectful. John David Washington. John David Washington is always playing a Fed. He has never not played a federal agent.
He's just.
We don't even know if he's not a federal agent in Malcolm in real life.
If I understand this movie correctly, they had to have in the future. No, hold on. Sorry. In the past, they needed to remember before they like go into a building like that to shoot a bunch of bullets into the wall, and then when they're like extracting whatever they are, they suck them back
right.
into their guns, which kills the guys. Right? Why not just shoot them with
With
guns?
this is the problem with the movie, is that there's no reason for them to be doing this. Like there's no, I can't tell the benefit to like
trying to get your mind racing, but now that I like understand like most of the gist of it, it's like why though?
Yeah, there's no benefit except for maybe like
planting stuff.
Right. Okay. Except for maybe espionage. Like, but I can't understand why else there's a benefit to like pulling a bullet through someone as opposed to just shooting them.
Because it hurts more. Because it hurts more to have a bullet unfired through you.
Yeah.
Because it's more
entropy.
Yes.
Entropy.
And
it's science fiction, Justin. Have you ever fucking heard of it?
But I get what this serves narratively. Like, it's cool to see in the cold open something that you recognize and then something you don't recognize, right? But like, we'll get into this as we get deeper. Why is Pattinson at the opera house? We never loop back and figure out what he was doing there. He was just
saved him, right?
Because he would have been sent by John David Washington. If John David Washington founded Tenet,
right,
then he would have told him, "Hey, go." It's the whole movie is a paradox.
I think the best
I knew
way
from the very beginning that it was him in charge of it, sending stuff back through time. That's like too obvious of a thing not to do.
Oh, is it? Is it too obvious not to do?
No, I did.
Did you get that? Did all of you out?
I don't think it's obvious.
What's that short film, Justin? Where it's like that old French movie from like the 30s that like they show people in film school, and he goes back in time, and it turns out the thing he saw as a kid
the tarmac movie, the plane movie.
It's I guess you could.
It's not about planes, but a flight. No,
he's sent in. It's like a slideshow. Like the movie is a bunch of stills.
Interesting.
He's sent back in time, and when he's a kid, he sees a man fall to his death. Then he sends himself back in time. And he falls to his death, and when he was a kid, he saw himself dying. I was like, okay, so they're doing this thing. This is like
it's like a
multi-million-dollar remake of that, like old
La Jetée.
Yeah. Well, it's
I saw it coming that it would ultimately all come back to him.
Congratulations. I think the best way you can think about this is it's a fixed timeline, right? There's like 3 different schools of thought when it comes to time travel. There's the dynamic timeline which is like Back to the Future, where things can happen and then you can go back and change that thing, and you've effectively changed the past and you can do it over and over again. There's the multiverse theory, which is what you see in Endgame, which is that anything you do in the past doesn't affect your reality. It just creates another reality, another universe.
A branch reality.
Exactly. And then the fixed timeline, which is basically anything that was going to happen will happen. It will always happen, right? So
determinism.
Exactly, which is like the theory is like, if you go, wow, this is going to get dark. If you go to kill Adolf Hitler as a baby, right? You kill Adolf Hitler, you replace that baby so no one notices. That baby that you have
that baby becomes
Hitler. So it always happened either way. That was what was always going to happen.
Which I think that's where Tenet is.
I think Tenet it's a loop, right? Everything that happened was always going to happen. When he, we'll get into this, but like when he encounters, that person that was inverted, that was always going to be a person he encountered. It was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is interesting.
It's I'll after this we'll move forward, but it's trippy. Time travel is always tricky too from a narrative standpoint, because as many problems as it might allow you to avoid or fix, it creates a bunch more. But I was very engaged. If there's one thing Nolan knows how to do, it's open a film, especially with an action sequence, and very similar to like The Dark Knight, right, with the bank robbery. And to Memento, I think the first scene of Memento, isn't he like in that he's like driving in the car and he's like, how did I get here? Is that how the movie starts?
Oh,
the first scene of Memento is the guy getting shot,
right? And he's the negative, the picture. Yeah,
that's right. And then he's shaking it. Yeah. But yeah. So I mean, I'll say my thoughts about John David Washington now because Wes opened the floodgate. I wanted to enjoy him more in this movie.
Yeah,
I'm still not sure whether or not
was he bad? You think
He wasn't
like
great.
him.
No. Go ahead, Justin.
And I
what about
because I've
that, what
seen
about
him.
that line where he shows up and he's like, "Hey, I ordered fucking
Dude,
hot dog an hour ago."
Christopher
No,
Nolan,
I know.
Christopher Nolan, this is your first Black American lead, and you have him say a line about hot sauce? Are you serious?
Hey, I ordered some
I,
pudding.
I actually, I have a theory. I think John David Washington ad-libbed that line.
Maybe.
I think he did because there's no way he's
That
so
Christopher-
loose on that line,
Yeah.
and he's so stiff in the rest of the movie. And it's
Yeah.
not. Look, I'm a hater. I will hate on anyone. I don't think it's his fault in this movie. I think the script is
I thought
90.
it was fun.
I think his script is
Same with Pattinson. It's like
The script's
he's
not giving him what,
pretty
yeah,
good.
because the
It
concept
just
is
seemed
character.
like a stiff,
didn't-
tight-laced Nolan movie.
But he didn't pass out when that bullet flew back into the gun, and that was the first mistake of the movie. I would have died. That would have killed me effectively.
If you saw that happen.
Anytime she's like, "Oh, so these are two bullets. One of them can fly back into my hand because it's moving backwards," and he's like, "Oh, great." I would. What are you talking about? You needed full.
okay. Which brings us back to the synopsis. So
yeah,
Let's go
go
back to
just
the
yeah.
synopsis. Here we are. After seizing an artifact, the protagonist is captured by mercenaries, right? So this is right after the opera house sequence.
Mhm.
He is tortured and consumes cyanide. He awakens to learn the cyanide was a test of loyalty. His team has been killed and the artifact lost.
So how'd they get him out of the hands of those terrorists?
it was a trick.
That was
Or the
weren't-
terrorists
they
were
weren't-
working for them, I
People
guess.
were dying and getting shot.
I think, but
That part wasn't a trick.
that part was real.
The craniums exploding and blood and brains coming out was real. It was very real.
It was,
Wait, what about the people who died?
what about the people that are no longer here? I think,
You don't think the U.S. government would execute a couple people as a test?
You're absolutely right.
or a couple hundred people.
That's so convoluted to like wrap some guy into your time travel thing. Like if you survive this one mission and like take the suicide pill, like we'll know that you're fit for
We'll
time.
know that
travel.
you're good. Yep. Yes, I think the people that he's captured by at the end of that mission are the people, right? That obviously are the people that are conducting this test, and the terrorists were real. They were real terrorists. They were killed, right? Here we go.
Sure, man.
Here we
Hey,
go.
sure.
Let's not dwell on this. There's so much more to get through.
Yeah.
Here we are. The protagonist is recruited by an organization called Tenet.
Tenet.
A scientist briefs him on bullets with inverted entropy, meaning
Oh my God.
they move backward through
Briefs.
time. She believes they are manufactured in the future, and other inverted objects seem to be remnants of a war in the future. Now, let me stop it right here, because I will say I loved that idea. The idea of finding artifacts from a war that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
I
It's a
mean,
cool idea.
Good concepts.
and then it just like eats itself and destroys the concept. But
Yeah, it's an Ouroboros of a movie.
I will say though, the moment where he is shooting the gun and the bullets moving backwards,
Yeah.
right? Like I think like these are the moments where you're like, oh, like this is kind of a James Bond movie, but not. Like, and it's this point of the movie where you're kind of like, oh, maybe I'm on with this. Like I don't get the science,
Yes.
whatever. But he's wearing a suit. He's shooting a backwards gun. He's getting a special. You know what I mean? Like there's the trap.
And Wes, to your point, if I could be facetious and say, Nolan, if you wanted to make a James Bond movie, why didn't you just say that? But
he
at
does.
the same time, there's no, maybe, but there's no way that they would let James Bond do something this complicated. You know what I mean? Like the James Bond character wouldn't fit with a concept of this
Right.
weird.
Yeah.
You're so like it's just like there are Joker movies that aren't about the Joker. And, this is like a James Bond movie that's not about James Bond in the same way that Kingsman is, in the same way that like any Guy Ritchie movie is. And yeah, I think that you're right. Like at that point, you're like, okay, cool. He's got his cue and he's like, this is the mission. Don't really understand it, but world's ending, whatever. A million movies have had that premise.
right.
Here's where I'll introduce theory number one, which is that this scientist is the scientist that sends the equation, that comes up with the equation in the future anyway,
The one
and
that
then is in a loop with herself, figuring it out as she's like, because they say it's a woman.
that's cool.
So that's- Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Because later in the movie, obviously it'll come up in the summary, but they say that this was this inversion is an equation that was developed by this woman, so that she could revert the time back to before the world became uninhabitable.
Right.
And then she found out that people were going to use it for war crimes, because why wouldn't you?
Of course.
Yeah.
Do crime.
No, that tracked.
Yeah.
What I'll ask Zach though is, so I had a question about your time theory model and it being fixed time. So they keep talking about like a ticking clock at the end of the movie is that at some point the Earth is going to become uninhabitable. Would your theory suggest that that's always going to happen? Like nothing they do is ever going to avoid whatever apocalypse the future is. They're just wasting time by sending things back. Like they're just trying to avoid the inevitable. Is that
I guess. I mean, right. The world is becoming uninhabitable because of climate change, which for some reason they can't use this inversion technology to figure out climate change, that's the biggest crime.
Will they go and get stuck in the Industrial Revolution?
So I mean that's the question that really destroys, I guess.
Well, there's another idea that like maybe I don't know if this will help Zach and Wes with what we're talking about, but there's this idea that like Andre Sater, who is played by Kenneth Branagh, was always going to fail,
right?
Because obviously if the world had ended, the movie wouldn't happen,
right?
So like if he had killed himself and set off the time bomb,
I don't understand that climax battle.
There are no enemies.
It's unclear.
There are no bad
guys.
What?
It's the pincer. They're coming back.
We're running a temporal pincer movement.
Okay, let's keep going, and then we'll address
Here we
it.
are. All right. The protagonist meets Neil, Robert Pattinson, through a CIA contact, and they trace the inverted bullets to arms dealer Priya Singh in Mumbai. They learn that Priya is a member of Tenet, and her cartridges were purchased and inverted by Russian oligarch Andrei Sater. Wow. So, there's a really great sequence. Let's not dwell on this, but there's a really great sequence where they bungee jump up to this like skyscraper that they're holed up in. I don't know how that works.
No, me neither. Is that supposed to be them having had bungee jumped already, inverting?
No,
it's an inverted jump, isn't it?
That's just them doing that.
No, because you can't bungee jump up.
They had it inverted.
It's going in reverse, but we never see them jump off of it.
I don't think.
Right.
I will.
No, because remember in the scene before, he's like, they're talking about it, and he's like, "You said we won't dwell on this." I'm sorry. Every time there's action in this,
I haven't even thought about the movie that much. It really does kind of fall apart.
Yeah, it does. Well, I was gonna say, I think they literally did that jump. I don't think they invert, because they're introduced to the inversion turnstile in that one scene, right? So and they can't breathe regular oxygen because you can't breathe oxygen backwards. Thank you. So right, exactly. So I think they would have had those oxygen things. I think Nolan hopefully would have made a thing about showing them being inverted there, right? I don't think I think the first time that the protagonist inverts himself is in that one scene where he makes the decision to do so.
Or the actual ropes, like the bungee ropes themselves, were inverted ropes that someone sent back.
Oh, they wouldn't operate the same way as regular ropes.
But no, exactly. That's why it's backwards. It would snap
they don't have to be inverted, Zach, for the object to be inverted. Because, for example, obviously, like before the protagonist is inverted, he's able to use the inverted gun. So remember, like, there's the whole thing is like there's someone manufacturing this stuff in the future, and
okay. So
moving on.
So the ropes were inverted. Okay. You know what? I hate everything.
So fun and so sick.
In London, the protagonist approaches Sater's estranged wife, Kat, who is Elizabeth
Debicki.
Right, everyone's favorite. An art appraiser who falsely authenticated a forged Goya drawing. This is where I stopped caring, and
the most pretentious blackmail I've ever.
Hold on. Goya is a very important painter. You guys.
Sure. But leave it to Christopher Nolan to say, "Hey, blackmail's usually like you murdered someone or like you had an affair. No, this time you falsely appraised a legendary artist."
But here's
people don't have like relationships in these movies. Like
That's
that
true.
would be a non.
I was
He doesn't know how to
barely
do it.
following that. I
No,
thought it
yeah,
was
like
something
Zack's-
about
yeah.
like a painting and like a illegal art collector or
cares?
something, and I was
Right.
like, okay, like that's all I need to know.
Sorry,
Well,
wait, I'm
they
sorry,
say
Zach.
it
Is
really
this
quickly, don't they? I missed it.
the Wikipedia article may not say this, but is this after he meets Michael Caine in the restaurant?
Michael
Michael
Caine
Caine.
is
And he
not
tells him,
listening.
"Hey, if you're trying to look like a billionaire,
Hmm.
Brooks Brothers isn't going to cut it." He like class shames him, and then also like Michael Caine in this movie. Yeah, I'll do your movie, Nolan, if I get to sit down for the whole thing.
Yeah, thanks for bringing him in. That just takes me out
I'm
of
only
it.
in there for 20 minutes, and then I'm gone, and I'm going to eat during the filming. He's
Yeah.
eating steak. His lips are wet.
It's a point. It's
Anyway.
a pointless thing.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just
Nolan
yeah,
doesn't let
people
his
talking to
actors
people
sit
talking.
down.
He
You
doesn't
don't know
apparently.
that? They're
Apparently
not
not.
allowed to sit.
Except for
There's a
Michael
video
Caine.
with, Henry David Washington and like Robert Pattinson and that tall lady on set, just like standing around with their arms crossed.
Yeah.
Allow folding chairs or anything.
Yeah, no, except for Michael Caine, because I'm 80 years old, and
Yeah.
you're damn right, I'm sitting down. Go ahead, Zach.
She tells him that Sator purchased the drawing from the forger, a repo, which is a palindrome
Opera.
for opera.
Yeah.
Wait, that's not a palindrome. That's not what a palindrome is.
No,
But it's just backwards opera.
yeah.
Let's cut that.
Well,
out.
the Satyr square
is the same.
is a pound. It's a giant
Yeah,
palindrome,
exactly,
and
right.
that's where all the words in this movie come from.
Correct.
It's like a Latin, like a Roman artifact or Roman thing.
Yeah.
So it has the word tenet in it and all that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
We're
Oh
cutting
my
that
God.
out. I sound stupid. And
That's like a word he made up for his movie.
No, it's a word he discovered in a crossword puzzle.
Sator purchased the drawing from the forger, a repo, and is using Kat's authentication as blackmail to control her in their relationship. The protagonist and Neil, for whatever reason, they couldn't come up with a better plan, so they plot to steal the drawing from a Freeport storage facility at the Oslo airport, which is really the whole point of this, is to just get her out from under Sator's control, right?
Yeah.
Because that's
Right.
crucial.
Well, because she.
Why did they do this?
I knew a lot of this would be us like trying to figure out.
Right.
Fine.
But I think because she is the one that like is close to Sator, so she knows how they can kill him later on when they, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah, right, great. Here we are. There, they fend off two masked men who seemingly emerge from a turnstile.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big scene. Afterward, Priya explains the turnstile is.
I knew when that happened that it was them. That it was just them going back. And
I also at that point I assumed, I was like, oh, he's probably fighting himself, because that feels like something Christopher Nolan would do.
I didn't catch it. I'm sorry.
No,
Me
that's
We're 2-on-2 though. It's fine.
I'm a big old.
My theory from the beginning was that everything was just him doing some shit back in time. Like when that car crashes in reverse, I'm like, oh, he's gonna go back in time and crash.
right. Yeah. Yeah, that's which is a very Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, right? That's what it's. That's another example of a fixed timeline. Harry gets hit in the head with a rock. Later on, he hits himself in the head with a rock. They never changed the past. They always just completed that task when they went back in time.
Yeah.
God, I'm smart. Here we are. Afterward, Priya explains the turnstile is a machine that can invert the entropy of objects and people, and the masked men were the same person traveling in opposite directions through time.
boy.
Holy
Wow.
quack.
So there's that whole backwards fight, which was great to watch, and
At one point, it looked like he was doing the Exorcist like spider walk. Like he was like trying to get up the floor like with his shoulders. He was like shimmering.
Yeah.
Apparently, John David Washington and Pattinson both learned how to fight backwards. Like the choreography was designed so that they could learn it backwards and forwards.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Well, I'll chime in here as the martial artist of the group.
Okay.
One of the things I noticed about the choreography was that the reason it wasn't very striking based, there was a lot of grappling, because that's kind of like, it's easier to make that look like it's going backwards because there's no sense of direction per se. It's just like two people holding each other and moving.
Yeah.
But there was that point where like John David Washington starts punching, and that's when it looks goofy because he's like pulling
no
his
impact.
punches back. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no sense of like him actually hitting something because I guess he's not.
And then like why would an inverted fight even, like the person who's inverted wouldn't be feeling any pain, right? Because, or would they?
Or they would have pain, and then when
it would be systematically relieved from them. Yeah.
They get stronger as the fight goes on.
Which is an interesting thing, but no one ever said that. So.
Yeah.
This is a fake sci-fi concept.
You're right.
Yeah, that's one of those things that we've just had to come up with on our own.
All right. Here we can dissect this all day, every day. So we have to press. On the coast of Italy, the Amalfi. I was trying to avoid saying this word, and that's what happened. Kat introduces the protagonist to Sator and learns the drawing is intact, right? Mm-hmm. Because that whole mission was a failure. They didn't accomplish anything. Sator plans to kill the protagonist very graphically. I don't know if you remember how he describes how he's going to kill him.
No, he says he's gonna slit his throat open and then cut off his nuts and put them in the hole so that he can choke.
Yeah. And it's like it's just a lot. It's a lot.
We're intense. We're crazy characters.
So, but the protagonist saves Sator's life after Kat attempts to drown him in the most awkward scene in the movie. This entire sailing scene is so that
she just thought that would be okay, and that they would just like keep. And I thought she was like pranking him. She thought she was murdering him. Like,
yeah. Well, it's weird because Sator, I think the protagonist somehow lets Sator know that like he has a bit of information that Sator might want. Instead of just stepping to the side and talking about it immediately, they wait an entire like 7 hours to go sailing just so that Kat can try to kill him, forcing the protagonist to win Sator's trust when he might have already gotten it if you just wrote a different scene.
Right. It was just unnecessary.
It's really goofy.
Here we are. Sator,
apparently they were filming with the audio like while they were on boats and stuff. And that's why some of it is so unintelligible.
Yeah. Well, which reminds me, so we can get into the audio question because the audio has been the bane of this movie's like critical reception.
Yeah. Literally the bane of it. If you recall The Dark Knight Rises, yeah.
But Nolan has always had issues with sound. Like that's always been a criticism. I don't, it's not as bad. I don't think in some of the movies it gets really ragged on. I think Dark Knight Rises is when it started to get,
in the Dark Knight, I remember there's that part where he's like analyzing the bullets that he's shooting into the brick. Yeah. And if you saw it in IMAX and even on like the Blu-ray and stuff, like, the gun is so ear-shatteringly fucking loud.
Yeah.
he loves his loud fucking gunshots.
The mixes are always weird. Yeah. But what I'll say is the funniest thing to come out of this movie was, so Nolan screens this for a bunch of directors, right? And apparently one of the directors is like, I can't hear anything. Like, I can't hear any of the dialogue. Like, he comes up to him, and that is his criticism. And the internet has suggested, allegedly, that this is David Fincher. That David Fincher went up to him after the movie was done. It was like, I can't hear this mix. This is bad.
If QT was there. Him and QT suck each other off.
Not even they wouldn't like each other. They like the opposites of each other.
No, they're
Nolan and Tarantino?
They're good friends.
Are you serious? Yeah. Whoa.
Nolan and Tarantino, they love each other.
Whoa. But yes, so the sound mix in this movie is suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. You need subtitles for everyone all the time. They're just the whole time. They're whispering and really fast, like these crucial pieces of plot. Yeah. Here we are. Let's continue. Sator and the protagonist strike a partnership to retrieve a case that supposedly contains plutonium-241, which is, I'm assuming, something for a nuke, right? Yeah.
Probably.
Plutonium, sure.
Yes. Right, yeah. In Tallinn, the protagonist and Neil ambush a convoy and steal the case, which actually contains the artifact lost in Kyiv in the very beginning. The whole point of the opera mission. They are ambushed by an inverted satyr holding Kat hostage. The protagonist Are we? Have we?
Go ahead.
Have we ceased?
Go ahead.
Gentlemen, please listen to me as I recount the plot from this extremely convoluted movie. The protagonist gives Satyr an empty case who retreats after receiving it. He rescues Kat, but is soon captured and taken to a warehouse with a turnstile. So this is where things start to really pick up. We have the sequence with the car wreckage that inverts itself and rewinds, basically, and the car driving backwards.
That interrogation was cool.
It was. Did I understand it? No.
Yeah, this is again where like
he was interrogating her and it was going backwards.
Right. This is the part where again, like the audio mix, like not having clear dialogue on top of then trying to invert said dialogue and repeat it twice is like, come on, dude, you got
and have it on and having the Bane masks on.
And then having a glass shield partition between them, it gets
it was the pandemic movie, truly, because there are times where you're like at Popeyes and you have a mask and they have a mask.
And there's bulletproof glass between you.
Yeah, bulletproof glass because you know what it is. And you're like, I would like a chicken sandwich. And they're like, huh? So,
yeah. And I think at this point in the movie, it's basically Satyr is interrogating the protagonist for the location of the plutonium, but then right, or the equation.
Yeah, it's the piece, right? The plutonium, which is actually the piece. The
piece.
MacGuffin.
And then we find out that because he shoots Kat with this inverted bullet, and then we find out that he actually had already arrived at this place before they got there. Mm-hmm. So he went through the turnstile and went into the future and then saw himself interrogating. It's a really weird moment, but it's where the movie turns on its axis. Yes. And right after that is where the protagonist decides also to go into the past. Which you can recount. I think, like he does it to save what's her name.
He does it to save Kat and also to try and prevent Satyr from getting the piece in the first place. Yeah, it's crazy. There's honestly not much I can even say about the interrogation because the moment I start to try and rationalize it, the moment my brain starts to decompose.
What if they made this movie without like all the crime shit? Like, what if it imagine like if it was in depth like this world where time travel like this is normalized? Like, how do you make food?
And you could have
you go back in time and like try and make it really cold, and then you play time forward, and it's like your burger's ready because they made it really hot. Like, imagine how creative they could have done.
You could have done a story where John David Washington's character tries to go back in time and get his parents to get together.
Yeah,
and then he ends up like in a car with his mom. He's making out with his mom.
And
his father.
There's like this older man.
Interesting.
Who's, like, guiding him through it.
Yeah.
And then he punches the bully that shows up in the parking lot.
What movie is that?
And then in the second one, he goes back and
Donald Trump is president
trying
before
to get around the first version of him that was sent back.
Yeah,
McFly.
And then he goes to the Wild
West. I'm sorry, Zach. Go ahead.
Let's
probably have like 3 paragraphs left.
Tenet operatives led by Ives. Aaron Taylor Johnson is in this movie. Thanks for
Quicksilver.
Yeah.
Yep. He's back in it.
Doing a Kano accent.
Yeah.
I kept wondering if that was him.
Yep, it's him. Tenet operatives led by Ives arrive and rescue the protagonist, and Satyr escapes into the turnstile. The group takes Kat through the turnstile, inverting them and reversing Kat's bullet wound, right? The now inverted protagonist travels back in time to the ambush site where he attempts to retrieve the artifact but is intercepted by Satyr. The best way to think about this is he goes through that turnstile and it's like the world is now on rewind, but it's rewinding at the same speed as the world does at normally, right? So if he's traveling somewhere where it would take him half an hour to get there, it takes him, it's like it's in reverse, right? So instead of it being 11 to 11:30, it's 11 to 10:30. Right. I'm sorry. I hope everyone is okay after.
You guys still here?
You didn't write the book, Zach.
You sure didn't.
I sure didn't. All right, here we are. The protagonist's car is overturned and catches fire, but Neil saves him and reveals he is a member of Tenet.
What?
Right?
Neil.
Pattinson the
The
whole
leading
time? The protagonists, Neil and Kat, travel back in time to the free port in Oslo. The protagonist fights his past self, which was that sequence that we talked about, enters the turnstile, and reverts. So now he is moving forward in time. Right. He's just
from the past point he traveled to.
Exactly. So now he's back there, but he's moving forward. He's right. Which is like he pressed play and he's just back in the past, right? Later, Priya explains that Seder is collecting the artifacts to assemble an algorithm which is capable of catastrophically inverting the entropy of the Earth. So instead of right, so it's like putting the entire world through one of those.
Want to do that?
I guess basically doing what Superman did at the end of the Richard Donner movie.
Yeah. Kat reveals Seder is dying from pancreatic cancer. They learn that Seder is using a dead man's switch to trigger the algorithm. Kat believes Seder will travel back in time to commit suicide during their vacation in Vietnam so that the world will die with him at the last moment he was happy. Thank God that she told the protagonist about that random time where that happened. So he knew exactly when that was going to be.
I feel like we're being CinemaSins, but quite honestly, like there are parts of this movie that I just don't think make sense.
Yeah. No.
And I'll be real with you, like I'm not a nitpicker, but like when the issues of the movie take me out of the movie and I have to think about the science of the movie while I'm watching it, I feel like there's too much science.
Because what we're doing right now is not even like film criticism. We're just like poking holes. But this movie kind of, that's almost the only way to
you can analyze it.
Because it's so...
Because there's no story.
That stuff.
There is no story. It's a device. It's a technical device, and it's two halves of the same movie.
In the way that last week, Dan, you were talking about how, for example, the lighthouse is like all form, but even the lighthouse still has a story because it's about these two characters that are locked in a place and going crazy together. Yeah. Tenet
the
is
the time I think form takes over in Tenet is when they're doing the reversey stuff,
which is what you want to do.
But even then, I mean, you know, he's shooting in like state of the art 70 millimeter, and that's
right. I just mean in terms of like the conceit of the movie is what takes precedent more so than even in Inception, because like in Inception, at the very least, you're following Leonardo DiCaprio's character who like has this motivation to get back to his kids, and he has this guilt complex about what happened to Maul, right?
Right.
What is the protagonist's motivation? Like
saving
to
the
really,
world.
I mean, he lives in the world, but like
he wants to get with Elizabeth Debicki.
Is really what it is. Yeah,
he gets friend zoned though.
He's like, our first time. Our first time, I'm down bad.
Get to the part where they're shooting people, and
we are at the home.
I didn't understand any of that.
Yeah,
where's that place where they're fighting guys? Like,
Nothing.
What was any of that?
Here we are. I
didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah, no. Here we are. The protagonists Neil and Kat and Tenet troops travel back in time to that day, where Kat disguises herself as her past self to keep Seder alive long enough for Tenet to secure the algorithm. Wow. Tenet tracks the algorithm to Seder's hometown in northern Siberia, where it is heavily guarded. This is where you completely lost me. They launch a temporal pincer movement with non-inverted red team troops and inverted blue team troops making a simultaneous assault. Right? So the idea behind this is that the blue team attacks from the future going backwards, and the red team attacks from the present, and they are each benefiting from the information that they have like received from fighting this battle, even though it's happening from our perspective simultaneously.
Right.
God. Right? Okay. And so, there's this big battle. Everyone's running around. It's exciting. John David Washington is running faster than you've ever seen him go. But
he's so fast.
He is, but you cannot tell who anybody is shooting at. There are no enemies. And I think the moment that I did want to bring up is the soldier that is shoved into a wall. Did you remember that critical moment?
He's unexploded. Remember, Dan, there's a hole in a wall somewhere, and then like
the
debris swallows him back into the building.
hold on, wait,
So
hold
that
on.
guy's just annihilated.
Hold on. Does that mean he was always going to die? What is happening? What do you mean?
He is now a part of the structure of that building.
So, before the other team got there, the team that's going in reverse would have had to like blow up that part of the wall
With
and then
him.
blow it up once the guys who were going forward in time.
But does that mean that there was a guy that was in the inverted team that blew up the building and flew backwards out of the building?
No. Because okay, first of all, what a pincer movement is in real life is that two flanks of an army, two portions of an army or a group, a battalion, they flank their opposition, so they go on opposite sides of it. A temporal one is they're attacking the same target from opposite times, which does not seem productive at all. Because why would you be able to? I mean, like, because stuff like that happens. That guy getting earthbended into the wall, and then you have like the triple explosion that happens on that other building where they launch the RPGs and then it blows up, but then reconstructs and blows up
for
again.
reasons, because they had to do that.
Because it's cool, because you got to cut a trailer, Zach.
Yeah, because you can see guys going back and guys going forward, and they're all that stuff.
Okay, Zach, take us home, Zach,
Let's do it.
please.
Let's go home. At a critical moment, an inverted blue team soldier wearing a red trinket, remember that,
What could it be?
sacrifices himself to save the protagonist and Ives. He gets shot in the face. Meanwhile, in Vietnam, Kat kills Sater just as the protagonist secures the algorithm.
And boy does Sater get it. She like
Mortal
She like
Kombat death.
shoots him.
GTA 5 ragdolls off the side of the
Yeah, she shoots him in the chest, even though there's no blood wound. And then she because she's been wetting and lubricating the dock, she slides him off the top deck, and he hits his stomach on the railing and then flops off the back into the water. And I mean, like, I guess we're supposed to be satisfied because earlier he does threaten to beat her with a belt, which is entirely out of place.
Hit her in the face. I think he does hit her in the
No, there's domestic abuse.
Yeah, and also
warning this episode, by the way.
And there's a point in this movie where Kenneth Branagh just starts screaming, most of his lines are delivered at like a heightened volume. He talks about you don't question the tiger. You admire the tiger.
Something about looking
Turns
at tiger
on
and
you.
looking into the tiger's eye.
Something about something.
It's true nature.
So she kills him. Yeah, and then what happens?
The protagonist, Neil, and Ives break up the algorithm and part ways. The protagonist notices that Neil is wearing the red trinket. He was a soldier the whole time.
Pattinson.
I don't know if it mentioned it earlier, right? Did it? Did we say? Sorry, let's.
Yes,
he's at the beginning. He's at the beginning.
He's the one.
It said that. It said that, right? Okay, yes, good. We can cut that out. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Neil reveals he was recruited by the protagonist in the future, and this mission is, from his perspective, the end of a long friendship.
I like that line.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Gone with the Winds line.
Yeah.
Or, no, I'm sorry.
No.
hold on.
Casablanca.
Casablanca, yeah, they're walking off on the airstrip. It's the inverse of that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was and it's emotion. That's the only like emotional tissue we have in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Since she knows too much, Priya attempts to have Kat assassinated, but she is killed by the protagonist, who realizes what he is the mastermind behind Tenet.
But here's the thing. Here's the important thing about it. The protagonist, let me see if I can get this right, has an inverted phone.
Yeah.
And he tells Elizabeth Debicki, whenever you're in trouble, text me and text me the location and the time.
Yeah.
So that he'll always have a Rolodex of the time she was in trouble, so he can appear in the places where she's in trouble to save her.
Right.
Because she's already pre-recorded the messages for him.
Yeah.
Which is how he arrives.
He was just hiding in that lady's car.
Yes.
Yeah.
He hotwired the car.
She has bodyguards and Nolan.
This is where the movie ends, and this is where I'll introduce the final theory that I thought was worth mentioning.
Is that Neil is his son? His surrogate
is that
son?
Neil is Kat's son.
Yeah,
and that the last shot was actually supposed to be that you see the trinket on that kid's book bag. I mean, because think like the whole movie, they're not showing you this kid, so you figure he has to be important. But I think like Christopher Nolan was like, maybe that's one twist too far.
He could not justify that.
But
the implication there would be enough, though, and I think the implication is there that it's Pattinson.
I think it has to be Pattinson
Disagree.
because Pattinson is not blonde naturally, and that's a choice. Like they wouldn't have blonded Pattinson's hair if there wasn't a reason for him to be, unless Nolan just wants Pattinson.
He kind
to
of
look
has like a
him.
long kid haircut. So
Yeah.
Also, there is a as far as the name is concerned, his name Neil. If you take the French spelling of Maximilian, it ends with an en instead of a an, and then if you spell that backwards, it's it's Neil and Mixum. So it could be that somehow or another, the protagonist sent Neil back in time to help himself. It's just like a matter of how old he would be when he got sent back, which is like
Justin, where did you see this theory? That
it was on lines. It was on the line, and also CinemaSins is what keyed me into it. But online, I looked up like top.
Do they already have a Tenet video?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
For a while.
So fast.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they're immediate with it. Yeah, I mean, summarized thoughts. What do you guys? I mean, we ripped this movie apart, which is what we thought we were going to do.
I don't like doing it.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, I don't like doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna give it 2 equations out of 5.
Oh, great. I ultimately love sci-fi. I think sci-fi that takes itself seriously can be a lot of fun, and I just think that for as great as Nolan's concepts are, and as good as his action choreography is, and even as good as he is at hiring actors, because he always has great casts, I wish he would have a screenwriter who is more clued into humanity in a way that I think he often
he kind of has no business writing characters this robotic at this point, as long as he's been making movies. And I know it's not just a Nolan thing, because while the movies have gotten that way, like again, you look at Memento, that's a character, that Guy Pearce is playing.
Yeah, I would say even Bruce Wayne is a character. Like Bruce Wayne is
the Joker's definitely
the Joker's a character, but I think it really does John David Washington a disservice, because I think he just keeps getting stuck with scripts that don't really show off the juice he's got. You know what I mean? Like I think he's got a lot, and I think they just keep giving him bad scripts. But I will give this 5 Neil getting hit inverted through the heads out of 100.
So nothing, Dan.
He has this like prestige like aura to his films. People always talk about Nolan movies like they're prestige cinema. So I think it is kind of dangerous that he always presents these prestige films as like cold, like kind of lifeless, void of emotion. That's a problem I've had with him since Inception, and I think banking on people not getting your movie and kind of feeling like they have to say positive things about it because they're afraid they
don't get it,
missed stuff, or don't get it. So shit, I guess I'd give it like 10 nomadic actor Robert Pattinson out of 27.
Can we just
it's so cool how he doesn't have social media or anything. He doesn't have like a public persona. He just like materializes on independent film sets.
I just feel like Pattinson was going to be good either way. Like I feel like Pattinson's always good, but Pattinson also has the better role in this. Like he gets to be the fun guy.
Robert Pattinson in this movie, by the way, proving that if Matt Reeves did want to do the traditional Bruce Wayne, Robert Pattinson could pull it off, because he in that suit with that gelled back hair, man, looking pretty sharp. Also,
instead the Bruce Wayne we're getting is like a guy who doesn't see
a serial killer.
I think they're going to develop that persona in the movie. Like that probably by the end of the movie he'll be Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
maybe.
Hopefully.
Zach,
but
yes, I really loved the concept. It's right up my alley. I also love sci-fi, and just I thought this was so unique, time manipulation, and just kind of what you said, which is like showing actual time travel as opposed to just like boom, there's a flash, now you were in the past. But I think it just goes too far, and it just needed to be dumbed down a little, as stupid as that may sound. So I'm going to give this 3 inverted Aaron Taylor Johnsons out of 5.
Oh wow!
That's the best rating.
That's the best rating. But rest in peace to Aaron Taylor Johnson's accent, which gets into a fatal
I got
car
worried
accident.
for a second. I felt like Aaron Taylor Johnson died, and I just didn't.
No. His accent falls down a flight of metal stairs during that debrief scene, because he goes from like whatever British thing he's doing, like Cockney, to like straight up Southern at one point. Which
what is he
like
supposed to be?
I think he's supposed to be Cockney.
Yeah.
What? A Tenet agent.
Of Tenet?
He's a Tenet soldier.
I know we're done with nitpicking, but just one more question. Is Tenet a U.S. government organization, or is it an international body?
Tenet seems borderless.
I think it's
like
private.
a cicada thing. You know that Cicada Corporation? It's like really secret, and they like get people, and you can look it up. But that's what I was thinking of it as.
Well, I'll say one thing that is unimpeachable about this film: the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Ludwig Göransson did what he had to do.
Listening to the end credits song is like a Travis Scott.
Oh yeah,
it's really
the plan.
The plan.
Really
I've been listening to Posterity on repeat for the past few days. That the thing that was in the trailer with that chord progression on the keys. So
walking around pretending like you're inverted.
100%.
You
know what I did.
Time, Hans Zimmer wasn't involved. Right?
No, he was working on Dune. He's working on Dune right now.
No. Well, give it time. But that's going to do it for Tenet. We're going to take a break and then be back with my selection for the week, Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon. Stay tuned. Okay, folks, we're back from our little lunch break. Now we're going to kind of go into our second section, and we're talking about my personal pick for the day, Rashomon, which is a vaunted psychodrama from the legendary Akira Kurosawa, starring Toshiro Mifune, Machiko Kyo, Masayuki Mori, and Takashi Shimura, among others.
The way I see it, it's about like a couple bozos who can't remember shit correctly.
Right.
It's not that hard to fucking remember something. Just say what happened. These people can't do it. So now we have the whole drama around no one being able to fucking get the story straight. I mean, waste of time.
Right. There we are. Wes, I know you've collected some Letterboxd reviews.
Oh, you bet. So as we did before, these are 3 of the greatest Letterboxd reviews on letterboxd.com. You guys should all go to. Not that we're sponsored, but maybe one day.
It's like Tenet. We went back and put
we did. So my apologies if you're listening to this and I mispronounced your name. My bad. The first one is non-rated but has a heart next to it. It's from Lauren Wilford. We should cut that. And then
it's fine.
Go back.
It's the same thing.
This is a heart review from Lauren Wilford. This isn't about the fractured nature of the subjective experience. It's about how embarrassing the truth often is. Really concise, really good, I think. Now let's move over to this 3-star one, also from another user named Lauren. I understand why this is considered a groundbreaking piece of cinema, but I just can't get past the hysterical crying and maniacal laughing. It's just too much. I'm sorry. It was all caps.
There's a lot of that.
Thank you.
There's a lot of that. And then our final one is a 4.5-star review from Brendan O'Hare, which is Mifune is awesome because at any given moment, you think he's about to headbutt the camera.
When we were on break just now, I was talking to Wes about the whole hysterical laughing and crying thing. It's so like theatrical the way Kurosawa was doing it, because of course he was like a theater director.
Yeah, influenced by no theater. Yeah.
Yeah, and the people laughing in each other's faces to express that they've had like a breakdown,
a psychotic break.
You give more background on what that style of theater is.
So, I mean, I don't know a whole lot other than my theater degree about no theater, but it is a style. It was a style of. I mean, it probably still is a style of theater in Japan, and it's very different from Western theater. Obviously, it's much more presentational. Since the 20th century, American theater has gone more naturalistic. So when you're watching this, it feels. The acting feels very different, but I think as we'll get into, I think Mifune is actually giving like by all accounts, an amazing performance. Like I think
100%.
despite the acting style being different, I think his performance is really dynamic in a way that we can talk more about.
Yeah, and so before I get into going through before we get into your initial impressions, because I know Zach, you saw it for the first time.
Mhm.
Wes and Danny, this was a rewatch for you as it was for me. But I'm just want to talk a little bit about the importance of the movie overall. It was the first Japanese film to win the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, which is considered kind of the landmark moment in introducing Japanese cinema to the international stage, because and it also brought them back into sort of a positive worldview after World War II, which connects back to what we were talking about last week with Godzilla. Also, Akira Kurosawa met and was friends with the director of the original Gojira movie when they were both
Honda?
Yes, when they were both serving as assistant directors. But there was a lot of kind of back and forth between Kurosawa and the Japanese, the military censorship boards over this movie and a lot of the movies he wound up making. But yeah, it's known for that. It's also known for pioneering, or at least being an early example of a lot of cinematic techniques like handheld camera while we're moving through the forest, following people. Dappled lighting.
Long lenses.
Yeah. There's, dappled lighting, meaning when the lighting's coming through like trees or it's obscured by something. There's a lot of that in this movie. And also reflective light bouncing. They used a mirror for a lot of the, because it was still really dark even when they were filming in midday in the forest. So they bounced the light off of a mirror. So, and that's what, like, when you see those triangular looks. Yeah. You can see like, it looks like it's reflecting off of something. So, and the last bit of fun trivia is that Kurosawa, Kyo, and Mifune all have birthdays within a week of each other.
Wow.
Aries. Kurosawa was actually born on March 23rd, which is my birthday. Makiko Kyo was born on March 25th, and Mifune was born on April 1st.
Whoa.
What a fool.
Yeah. And it's interesting that they all lived together during the production of this movie, which Kurosawa credits for helping increase the intimacy.
I just think that's cool. It's a nice little concept.
Justin, do you know how many movies Kurosawa and Mifune did together?
Not offhand. I should have looked into it, but Mifune was to Kurosawa as DiCaprio is to Scorsese.
Yeah.
Yeah, or De Niro even. Yeah, in a bigger way. He was kind of his muse, and he was in all. I think
Mifune Kurosawa origin story.
Yeah, and he was in most of his samurai stuff. Kurosawa was actually the son of a man who came from a long line of samurai.
I know he is in Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, High and Low, Rashomon, obviously. I think he's in Throne of Blood.
16 films. 16 films, including Rashomon, Seven Samurai, Hidden Fortress, Throne of Blood, Yojimbo,
Sanjuro.
Bunch.
Yeah, and so, and Kurosawa had a career that spanned 57 years. So the man was prolific. Danny, revisiting this movie, I mean, I don't know how many times you've seen it, but what did you think of it this time?
Something like this is hard to review and like pick apart for me because it is, just a piece of cinema history, like a really important stepping stone for the careers of like all-time great actors and an all-time great director. Like you said, Justin, it was like Japan's introduction to the world of global cinema. For that alone, it's like a masterpiece. It's like 10 out of 10. And I don't know if I want to pick it apart really, because I don't think there's anything to be gained.
Sure.
For me, this is just a movie that I like pay respects to.
Yeah. Zach.
Yeah, I really liked it. I was really intrigued just by these different stories, and I know that's like and I know that has like a place in cinematic history, like the Rashomon effect, like just like these different accounts of these stories. And I just thought that was really cool, just like that escalation. So I enjoyed it a lot, and I thought, it was the style of the acting, you adjust to, and then you're like, oh wait, this is where it comes from, and then you're just like in it, and it's great. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was great.
I always thought Rashomon was a word in Japanese that didn't really translate that well to English, but it turns out Rashomon is just their town.
Well, it's
That's
the
why
name of
called-
it's the name of the gate. It means city gate.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why the gate has the kanji for Rashomon on it. And yeah, that's roughly what it translates to. Wes, you've seen it a few times too, right?
Yeah, I watched it. I watched it the first time. It was on this long list of films that you have to watch if you want to be good at films that my school gave me before I came in. So it was part of that bulk. It's hard. Like Danny said, it's hard to talk about a film like this without trying to find issues with the movie that is just like clearly just a skillfully made film, but also also not sound like a film bro and be like, wow, you know what I mean? So I think what I will say is it's not my favorite Kurosawa movie. I think Throne of Blood is his best movie that I've seen so far.
I love Akira and Seven Samurai.
But I think what's important about Rashomon, which is true about most of Kurosawa's important movies, is that you can see other movies riffing on the blueprint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people say this a lot about artists, and often it's pretentious, which is like it's before this artist and after this artist. But I actually think, sometimes you have an artist that really does change things like that. You know what I mean? Like you have people like Jay-Z, or you have like Basquiat, and you have like Kurosawa, who like changes the language of film. So I think you can definitely talk about other movies that are riffing on this, because there's a bunch.
Yeah. Well, those are all great. And I'm excited to talk about the movie more with y'all. I'll say as a clarifying note for our audience, because there were some people I sent this announcement to, and they were like, whoa, how are you going to relate those two? Usually we are more sure about our, as the host, we're more sure about our personal picks than we are about the consensus choice. And especially right now in a period where we're sort of in a dry release period, Tenet was kind of chosen after the fact. I think there are connections, and we'll talk about it at the end. But Rashomon was something that, in terms of introducing, I guess, my taste to you as the listeners, and obviously to my co-hosts who all know to a certain extent, I wanted to bring that on. And I wanted to talk about it because, as I said at the end of the last episode, and as Wes just pointed out, there's a lot of movies and TV shows that have tried to do tried to build on what Rashomon started.
My favorite is Hoodwinked.
Oh yeah.
Hoodwinked is a great.
Wait, I think I want to, just before we jump to the main thing, can we go around real fast and say what your favorite Rashomon thing is? Because I have one. And
like your favorite version of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Like a contemporary movie that has done the Rashomon effect.
You said Hoodwinked. Mine is Legends of the Dark Knight, the Batman episode where they all see Batman and they all think he's a different version of himself. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
Do you remember that episode Almost Got Him? It's like all the criminals sitting around their Almost Got Him story.
Yeah. Also a similar structure. Yeah. Do you guys have any? I just kind of threw this at you guys.
Yeah. No, it's all right. No, it's interesting. I mean, the closest example coming to mind is Knives Out. But not the end of it. Actually, the portion where they're all being interviewed by the police and they're talking about where they were during the birthday party, and they replace who's next to Harlan based on like, oh, we were so close to him, and yada yada yada.
It is really the template for like a murder mystery story.
It is.
I can't think of anything that really came before.
Zach, do you have one?
I was not prepared for this, and I don't have one.
I just made it up.
Piggyback. Knives Out too. I could say both. I could say Knives Out or Hoodwinked because I like both of those, but often I can't think of another one. Yeah,
and I'm remembering now. that is how that's structured. So basically, the conceit of this movie is that the film opens and we meet a woodcutter who is chilling out at this like rundown temple gate with a priest, and they're trying to stay dry while it's raining really heavily. And this commoner comes up and joins them, and they're telling him like, yo, we just witnessed this, we were just at this trial and we don't know what to make of it. There's this disturbing story, and they start recounting it to him. The woodcutter says that he found the body of a murdered samurai 3 days earlier while looking for wood in the forest. As he testifies, he first found a woman's hat, then a samurai cap, then cut rope, then an amulet, and finally he came upon the body. Upon discovering it, he says he fled in a panic to notify the authorities. The priest says that he saw the samurai with presents that the captured bandit. He saw the samurai with his wife, traveling the same day the murder happened. Both men are then summoned to testify in court where a fellow witness presents the captured bandit Tajomaru, who claims to have followed the couple after coveting the woman when he glimpsed her in the forest. And from this point, the story splinters into 4 different accounts. That of the bandit, Tajomaru, played by Toshiro Mifune, that of the wife, played by Makiko Kyo, and that of the samurai, played by Masayuki Mori, and then the woodcutter goes at the end. So we'll go story to story. One of the other reasons I picked this, though, is that in my first college, SUNY Geneseo, I actually starred in a stage production adaptation of Rashomon, and it was cool. But
who'd you play? Woo! Who'd you play?
I bet it was a big part.
I played the bandit, Tajomaru, and when I'm editing this, maybe I'll throw up some pictures of it so y'all can see when I put it on Instagram and YouTube and whatnot. But it was a fun role. One of the things, we'll just go right into the bandit story because I think this is the one that I enjoy the most, and I think that's intentional because Tajomaru is very self-aggrandizing. One of the things that I noted when I was going through this is how, like, what the chief characteristic of each character is based on who's talking about it. So in Tajomaru's own story, we have him as legendary, we have the wife as desperate, and we have the samurai as gullible.
Yes.
Pathetic,
pathetic.
And pathetic, and greedy even. And obviously the woman is desperate, but she's also a little fierce, which is part of his attraction to her. So yeah, we have the bandit talking about, he basically claims to have tricked the samurai to step off of this mountain trail with him to look at a cache of ancient swords that he's discovered. And then in the grove, he ties the samurai to a tree, somehow gets the drop on him, and then brings the samurai's wife there to look at him and laugh at him. And then she, noticing what's going on, she tries to defend herself with this dagger. So she's swinging at him, but he is able to evade her. And, we should also say trigger warning for sexual assault, which is the conceit, part of the plot of this film. But he aggresses on her, and then she begins to kind of give into it and is maybe seduced by him. So they do what they do, and then afterwards she's all ashamed and she begs Tajomaru to duel her husband to death so that only one man will have to know her shame. He decides to honor the request. They have this epic duel in the forest. Tajomaru reminds, he talks about he was very skilled. We crossed swords 23 times. No one's ever crossed swords with me more than 20. And he eventually kills the samurai. And the woman runs away afterward. And then they ask him what happened to the dagger. He says that he forgot about it in the confusion, but that the pearl inlay would have made it very valuable, and he regrets leaving it behind. So, especially for you, Zach, I actually want to jump to you first, since this is your first time seeing it. What did you think about this recount? I mean, going in, did you understand that you were going to see multiple accounts, or were you thinking oh, this is just how it happened? Until the next one.
I probably thought that was just how it happened. And I think that's I don't know what I was thinking was going to be the rest of it, but yeah, I think that's just what I thought had happened. And I was like, wow, what a great battle between these two men. And it ends with, does he throw his
He throws the sword. He throws the sword into his stomach, which is a weird bit of choreography. He raises it, holds it, and then tosses it down.
What a choice. What if he missed?
It's very dramatic, very theatrical. It seems like the type of thing that you would see in theater, okay, I'm prepping for the thing, get ready to move, scene partner, that type of thing. But yeah, he's this is Toshiro Mifune, kind of this is his spotlight as an actor and also as a character. Obviously we see him again, but this is when he gets to do the most stuff. One of the things I thought was interesting about his performance is that Kurosawa apparently told him to model it after an animal, and he picked a lion. And so, and I think you really see that, he's sweating the whole time.
Yeah.
He's slapping bugs off of him like a lion, kind of swats with his tail, scratching himself. And then he's always crouched and low to the ground. And I remember one thing that I took from that when I was doing it on stage was such a pretentious actor thing. But I would before I got ready to go out, I would roll my shoulders like like a lion kind of does when it's getting ready to prowl, and then that would kind of get me into the headspace. But you do see him kind of doing that. Wes, Danny, any thoughts about?
I mean, I think also I read somewhere that Kurosawa would tell Mifune to pick a gesture before, and this might be a version of the same
so
story.
He said to all of his actors,
yeah, pick a gesture,
repeat?
and that's the gesture of your character, which I think is actually a really useful way into it. And it's like a way of acting I'd never heard of before, which is because American acting is usually very much like here and here, like in your head and in your heart, and you're like
not so much in your body. Yeah.
And often your body, I mean, the major criticism of American actors is that the body gets left behind. So the idea of reverse engineering it so that it's body first.
The body is like a symbol.
Yeah.
And I mean,
larger than life gestures.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know. I mean, Zach, obviously we went to LaGuardia for 4 years. Danny, you were there for a year. They didn't necessarily, there was an emphasis on physicality in terms of like, I remember at least like, in certain classes we had to move like a certain element or whatever, or like walk with purpose, that type of thing. But I do remember around sophomore year deciding that like I would give each character I had a tick, because like human beings have ticks. We all have things that we do physically. Yeah, exactly. And I think that helps because obviously we inhabit our bodies, so like we can't divorce the character from that.
I'm stealing that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's mine now. I'm going to take credit for that.
I think, but as this part goes, like, well, I think even more interesting than the actual story, because each story I feel like doesn't become fully realized until all of them get unveiled. But like, the setup of having it be at a court, and someone on Letterboxd actually said this, like, we never see the court respond. We always see them responding to the court, and I think it's because we're supposed to be the jury.
Right.
And they're on trial with us, which is interesting. But Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking off of that, Toshiro Mifune a couple times he'll say like, "What? Huh?" As if he's wanting the court to repeat themselves.
I think you're right, Wes. That as we go on, all the stories are contextualized by each other, and the next one we hear is the wife, and she for this part I wrote down that in her point of view, Tajamaru is kind of mindless. Like in this flashback, he doesn't even really speak. He just laughs and then runs away.
Yeah.
She's very penitent towards her husband, and winds up being kind of like delirious. And then the husband is cold. He's very cold in this version of the story. Yeah. She tells a different story to the court. She says Tajamaru left after assaulting her, and she begged her husband to forgive her, but he simply looked at her without responding. She then freed him and begged him to kill her so that she would be at peace. He continued to stare at her with a look of loathing. His expression disturbed her so much that she fainted with the dagger in her hand and awoke to find him dead with the dagger in his chest. She attempted to kill herself, but failed in all her efforts. This part is interesting because it's right afterward we hear like the commoner at the gate say, "Oh, well, women use their tears to fool everyone, and they can even fool themselves." And I wondered if in this movie, do y'all think that the woman is ever vindicated, or do you think that like in everyone's story she's still kind of like, even in her own, like she's still kind of the manipulative?
This is a
great
question. This is a great question, and I think this will probably be a bigger question, but like there's definitely been like feminist film criticism around this movie, and I think the film, and this is four guys talking about a movie that is about sexual assault, like we are not going to get this correct, but I think the movie both wants and doesn't want to be on her side. Like the movie clearly has something to say about men needing to own women. Like I won't touch that woman if she's been touched by someone else. You know what I mean? Like she's been assaulted in front of you, and he's like, "Oh, she's been defiled. Like go with that other guy." And the movie clearly is interested in that, but it also the way the movie frames her, like literally frames her. The movie's always like looking down on her and like ogling her. Which is conflicting to me, because I'm like, are you on her side, or is the movie supposed to be another man looking down on her? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a question.
It could also communicate that she is in like a low headspace herself.
That's true.
Has like a bad,
True.
That's true.
And she has a poor self-image. Yeah. Zach?
Yeah, I really didn't know how I was supposed to feel about her, like, because it's like she's the victim, and then so easily the narrative just kind of spins where I'm like, oh, are we not supposed to like you? Like, what's going on? That part when she faints and then she's like, oh, I woke up and the dagger was in his chest. I was like, did she fall down and stab him in the chest? And then
That's what it seems like.
Yeah, so yeah, we can get into it more, like, because the next stories like go further with her character. But.
Yeah, I'll say that as far as her performance here, and I really like. There's like my 3 favorite performances in this are Mifune, Machiko as the wife, and then the medium, who we get to in the next story.
The medium is so great.
But I think that her performance really here, Machiko's performance, you can see it travel when she's begging him to forgive her or to say something, I think, and she's holding the knife, and you see her like go from pleading to kind of like angry, and she starts advancing towards him. And then she faints, and even then it's not clear whether like, oh, I fainted and then I woke up and he was dead, or no, I killed him because he was pissing me off,
right?
Because he didn't forgive me. But and then in the samurai story, obviously the samurai's dead, so they work around that by getting a medium to conjure him and tell the story through herself. The samurai claims that after assaulting his wife, Tajumaru asked her to travel with him. She accepted and asked Tajumaru to kill her husband, not you two fight, straight up kill him, so that she would not feel the guilt of belonging to 2 men. Tajumaru is shocked by this. He's kind of turned off, and he throws her on the ground and basically says, like, you choose what happens. Do I let her go or do I kill her? The samurai says, for these words alone, I was ready to pardon his crime.
Yeah.
It's like, bro.
And then the woman flees, and Tajumaru, after attempting to recapture her, gives up and sets the samurai free, who then kills himself with the wife's dagger, performing, ritual suicide, seppuku. And then later someone takes the dagger from his chest, but we don't know who did it. So this part is really where, like, again, what Wes just said really comes to light, that, because in a way, and as far as like my characteristics for each, obviously the samurai is depicting himself as very honorable in this moment, whatever that means for that time period. Tajumaru is conniving, and the woman is treacherous, right? Because like, as soon as she has an opportunity, oh, kill my husband, the love of my life, how could she do that to me, type of thing, right? I think that this is where the movie is at its peak of like pro-feminism, I guess, in terms of like, look at these 2 men, even on the meta level, because within the story, obviously it's casting judgment on the woman,
right?
But on the meta level, it's saying, look at these 2 men who have decided that like this woman is a floozy, and also like she's manipulative, and she should just die because and like the mercy that I had to spare her even after she betrayed me like that.
And also that men will resort to violence faster than they will parse their feelings. You know what I mean? Like the fact that in all these stories, she is assaulted, right? And no matter in what version of it, she's assaulted. Like that's the solid object in the story. The way the places the stories diverge is how the men react, and it's always to violence. Like they always go straight to like, I'm going to kill her or you for doing this. You know what I mean? And I think that's also what goes along with what you're saying.
For doing it to me too. It's like it's like for the samurai, it's like the rape happened to him, more so than he has any sympathy for his wife. Yeah. It's an interesting performance from him too. It doesn't have any moments of like, he's not yelling a lot, but he is doing a lot of staring and sort of like stoic contemplation and intensity, which I think he conveys very well. And then the medium here is just like, because they're doing a cool sound design thing.
No, I was gonna say it's a great example of like early sound design. There's a Japanese movie called Onibaba. Have you ever seen that? It's got very similar like demonic like voices, a demonic filter on top of what the actors do. I wonder how they achieved that.
They do it in House too, where the person has like a Satan voice inside of the person's body.
It's like a really early example of that, though.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's the precursor to Reagan from The Exorcist and the Deadites from Evil Dead.
100%.
Maybe the first demon voice in cinema.
Possibly. We should research that.
Maybe. Don't quote me.
Yeah, maybe.
If not, please edit up a picture of the actual first one.
Yeah, I mean, and also, of course, like in general, Kurosawa is preceded by like Yasujiro Ozu is making films a little bit before Kurosawa, but they just don't penetrate the bubble of Japan the way that Rashomon does. And I actually haven't seen any Ozu films, but I know that Danny's a big fan.
Which Ozu film?
Any of them. I haven't seen any, but I'm just saying, like, I know that you're a fan, so maybe
Tokyo Story and Good Morning are like amazing movies.
Yeah.
Floating Weeds is too.
So now we come to the Woodcutter's story, and this one is kind of the one that's framed the most as like the truth.
Yeah.
But, and we'll talk about, you know, Zack mentioned the Rashomon effect up top. There's some interesting stuff I read about that. We'll talk about how this might have been misinterpreted.
Yeah.
But in the Woodcutter's version of the story, now we're back at Rashomon Gate after the trial has ended. The Woodcutter says, you know, all three stories were wrong. Everybody lied. He witnessed the assault and the murder, but he declined the opportunity to testify at the trial because he didn't want to get involved. According to his new story, Tajomaru begged the samurai's wife to marry him, but the woman instead freed her husband. The husband was initially unwilling to fight Tajomaru, saying he would not risk his life for a spoiled woman, but the woman then criticized both of them, saying they weren't real men, that a real man would fight for a woman's love. Win it at the point of a sword, I think is something like what it's translated to. She urged the men to fight one another, but then hid her face in fear once they raised swords. The men, too, visibly fearful as they began fighting. In his recollection, the resulting duel was far more pitiful and clumsy than Tajomaru had recounted previously, with the men constantly tripping and flailing their swords wildly. But Tajomaru does win through a stroke of luck. After some hesitation, he kills the samurai and the woman runs away. Tajomaru couldn't catch her, but he took the samurai sword and left the scene limping. In this, I have their characteristics down. The woman is cruel. The bandit is insecure, and the samurai is cowardly.
Well, this is what I love so much about the Mifune performance is like when you're watching it at first, he's like Han Solo. You know what I mean? Like he's like a cool rogue. You know what I mean? And I think even Han Solo was inspired in part by some of Mifune's performances.
Probably.
You know what I mean? So like I think he's playing that role that he was good at playing. But like by the end, he's like super pathetic. Like you there's that great over the head shot where he's the smallest thing on screen, and he's just like, and there's like bushes around the frame, and you're looking at him and you're like, oh. And I believe this too. Like I believe that this is one person with a bunch of aspects to him. You know what I mean? And I think it's a great performance.
Yeah.
That the fight was just so entertaining to watch. Like, the justification for why one couldn't just like slice the other, like they'd be like right in front of each other. One would have the sword and go to swing just completely over their heads. That was really fun to watch, and I like that especially because thinking back to the way that the bandit describes the fight from his point of view, it was epic, and in reality it's like tag, you know what I mean? It's like adult purge tag.
And then I mean, but I mean, is this the truth? And this is where like I want to ask y'all, because you know I think that the priest and basically after this, you know, the movie pretty much ends. There's a baby that's heard crying in the gate, and the men go looking for it. Yeah, the commoner steals a bunch of clothes from the baby, and they're like, "Why would you do that?" And the commoner says, "You know, listen, it is what it is. And by the way, you didn't mention what happened to that pearl dagger because you probably took it. Yeah, so you're a bandit calling someone else a bandit. Get out my face." And then he leaves. And then
everything
the priest
we've seen in the movie, from like the forest, like. The only like constant that the movie has is under the Rashomon Gate.
Yes.
Because even him discovering the body in the very beginning was like
it's a lie. It's a lie. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so the commoner leaves, but then the priest and the woodcutter have a conversation, and the woodcutter says, "Look, I have 6 kids at home. I can take this one. It's fine." And it's kind of implied that he stole the dagger to feed those 6, now 7 children. And then he leaves, and the sun the sun kind of peeks out from under the clouds over Rashomon Gate. Sort of an optimistic ending, although I read that Kurosawa had wanted another cloud to be in view so that you know that like darkness doesn't just disappear. It's always on the verge of returning, but the weather just didn't work.
Couldn't get the cloud to cooperate.
Couldn't. Yeah. The cloud was due on set that day, but it,
on the flip side,
stayed
people
home.
talk about the symbolic wind in Seven Samurai, and it's like they were probably shooting on a windy day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But the reason I wanted to close out the summary and jump back to the woodcutter story is because we have it's an interesting panoply of characters that are at this Rashomon gate, right? Because you have this woodcutter who's just like a guy. You have the other guy, you know, the commoner who's there to kind of like doubt everything. And then you have the priest who is representing God. He's representing morality. Yeah. And I think that the woodcutter has an impetus to lie to the priest because he wants to seem blameless, you know? So if he has like no involvement in what goes on, he just was an observer, even though that in itself can be a sort of immoral thing depending on the situation. You know, if you see someone being assaulted, maybe you should feel you have a duty to step in. But men with swords, whatever. Point just being though that like, yeah, he would have been compelled, I think, to lie as well. But what's happened since I read about the Rashomon effect is like now the tendency is like in cop procedurals or movies or whatever to very clearly paint the final story as objective truth. Right. But that wasn't, you know, even the actors were asking Akira like, yo, so what's the truth? And he's like, it's not about that. You know, it's not about what objectively happened. It is about the fragility of our subjective experiences.
It didn't exercise on perspective.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or if objectivity even exists. Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody alters the story to fit. Everybody alters the story with a motive. You know what I mean?
There's always a narrative.
Yeah.
When my brother tells a story, he's like, yeah, and the guy was smoking a cigarette, and I punched him, and it flung up in the air, and I caught the cigarette. I'm like, no, this didn't happen.
This didn't happen that way. Yeah. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. The how disappointing, you know, like Thanos says, reality is often disappointing, right? Like even if, because I believe that while the woodcutter could have also fabricated something, I think that might be the closest. I think it's thematically resonant if his story is the closest to the truth.
Right. Third party perspective. It's like the least subjective.
Right. Yeah. The least reason to make any of them look good. And that's why all of them do look bad. Because that's the one where the wife is like full on insane. Yeah. And she's laughing for like, you know, seconds on end. And then you have this really cool reverse shot sequence of Tajumaru and the husband advancing on one another. This is where you can kind of really see that reflective lighting, like coming up on Tajumaru and on the husband. So yeah, really cool cinematography. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's doing a lot to kind of make us think about the way we remember things.
It really did make me think back on some of like the worst moments of my life, or even just like, you know, things that happen. I'm like, is that what happened? Like, am I crazy? You know what I mean? And that's not what it's about, but I do really appreciate that movie was able to make me think like, okay, well, you know, I might remember something this way, but it didn't necessarily happen that way, even though it's not a comforting thought really in this movie. You know, it can be. Yeah.
And I mean, like memory, you know, in general, obviously is such a strange thing because there's people that say, you know, each time you remember something, especially the further away it is, you're not remembering it, you're remembering your last memory of it.
Yeah.
And that starts to change the older you get. I think of like, you know, when I try to remember childhood, like, is there actually a vestigial memory somewhere of me being 4 years old, you know, singing Richard Smallwood gospel songs in the living room? Or am I just imagining that based on what people have told me has happened? And then my mind is filling in the blanks,
right?
You know,
it's a copy of a copy. Yeah.
Right. Like, and then like, you know, and then you think like, well, what's the difference? You know, if you want to get really deep with it, as far as the connection to Tenet, obviously both movies on a I know Wes, I hope you've thought of something. I'm going to say both movies, obviously from a filmmaking level and a theoretical level, are replaying themselves constantly. And they want you to kind of like, I mean, I think Tenet less so than, again, something like Memento, but they want you to question what's going on, and the idea of like what the passage of time does to how we remember things. And I also think that the depiction of women is pretty similar in both these movies because,
actually, wow.
Because what's her name?
Elizabeth
Debicki is like the only woman in that movie aside from the soldier. and she's living in a battered relationship, and her like strength or victory,
resilience,
yes, but it comes out of like her response to that abuse, and also like her coming to a point of, I don't know, like there's a question about like their sanity, I think, for both women. You know, there's a liberation that Elizabeth Debicki more clearly has when she dives off the edge of the boat and sees herself creating that paradox. But you could also say there's a way you could read Rashomon to say like, oh yeah, the wife was liberated, you know, in the woodcutter's telling of the story, because she made these two men fight to the death over her.
Yeah,
and
she had agency, more agency than she did in the rest of the stories.
Right.
I would also say along the lines of what Zach said at the beginning of the episode, but like both movies are about like fixed time, like time, whatever happened, and the consequences are going to roll out of that event. And no matter how many times you try to flip it and turn it and replay it, the consequences are the consequences, because we are in a fixed timeline.
Nice.
As Zach said.
That was good.
This guy knows. Yeah, so
know your stuff.
It's timelines.
I was following all that.
Yeah, but yeah, that is that's Rashomon. How would we rate it, each of us?
Oh.
It's immortal for me. I mean, it's as important as movies get. So,
Zach?
I would say reanimate it. Just I think a rewatch would probably bump it up to immortal, but just from my first viewing, I would say reanimate it definitely. I thought it was a great movie, and it should be talked about more. And it's like I really never really heard about it until I feel like I talked to you about it, and you know, taking as many acting and filmmaking and theater classes as I did, I feel like it's wrong that I haven't heard of it more. So
for sure. And yeah, I mean, you know, listen,
clarify my ranking though, because it's not out of entertainment value, Zach. I mean, I don't think you would watch it again and think more highly of it. It's purely because of how impressive it is for the time and how significant it is for Japanese cinema and the careers of Mifune and Kurosawa moving forward.
Sure, but what I'm saying is a rewatch with more context, you know, context that I don't really have, maybe necessarily that you guys have, just because you know what I mean? Like, I think that's what I mean. Not it gets more entertaining, but with added context and a rewatch, it bumps it up, you know?
Yeah. I was also going to say that, I mean, obviously, you know, if you're a film nerd, film buff, like most of us are, you've heard of Rashomon, even on, you know, it's as far as foreign movies go, it's kind of like one of the known ones if you know foreign movies. But yeah, I think it is kind of like, I think it's definitely obscure for a lot of people, even though they've seen it in other ways that they don't know about. Wes?
I would also go with Reanimated. I think it's a really well done movie. I mean, but you know, it comes down to like inches at this point. It's like, would you cut it on a Saturday, or would you cut something else on? I would cut something else on. But I enjoy it. Like, I think it's a pretty dense movie for it being only 90 minutes. I think the acting is incredible all around. I don't know. I think I am more appreciative of the action and mystery movies that it has inspired than the film itself. I think is where I'd look at it.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, I actually also will go Reanimated, but not for the same reasons. I think when I say that, I think that people need to know more about Rashomon than just the things that it's inspired. So I'd want it to kind of be recirculated into common discourse. And I think that like that's what, when I say Reanimated, that's what I mean in this case, is that its impact is obvious, but it itself is not. And so I think that like, if hopefully by talking about it, like, you know, our platform as it grows, we put more people onto it that may not have known about it. And I think that, that's kind of where I fall on it. I know we forgot to do Age the Worst and Age the Best. I don't know if you guys had anything that you thought fell into either of those categories.
Oh yeah, you could say
the
like
treatment of women.
Well, and you know the misogynistic stuff.
The misogyny has aged bad.
The misogyny.
There's no point of even touching on that stuff for me. I mean, it's, you know, obviously it's a movie from the 50s and it has very old school conservative.
Sure,
belief.
but you could say the same thing about Black Narcissus, which
Yeah, and with Black Narcissus, I didn't think it was that relevant either.
To talk about the brown. Well, yeah, okay, so then that's fair. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, there's a cutoff period where like movies were a certain way, and you kind of you have to take them by their merit. But like, for example, Danny and I, we've talked about how superhero movies age like milk, for example, like from an effects standpoint and even from a thematic standpoint sometimes. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be something to look forward to. Zach, do you have your selection for next week?
You know, I've been wrestling back and forth with two, and I feel like that very last bit of conversation that you just brought up has made me choose Chronicle.
Okay.
Oh boy, right. The Max Landis production.
I was gonna say because Zach, I thought you were gonna choose Mulholland Drive. I was gonna say Rashomon and Mulholland Drive with a lot of us.
I'm sorry, Danny. Next time, I promise. It was just the discussion of how superhero movies age that tipped the scale for me, I think.
This will be different because it'll be the first time we reviewed a movie that's come out, like we said, in the 21st century. I've never seen Chronicle.
It has aged like milk. Everything about it is aged badly.
Yeah.
So we'll see what it's looking like next time in the morgue, but that's going to do it for this episode. We thank you graciously for paying us a visit in this humble mortuary. If you like what you heard, check out our back catalog on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and the Podbean app. Rate and review the show where you can, helps us out a lot. Follow us on socials at The Media Morgue, and consider supporting us on Patreon, where we have tiers for early episode access and other bonus content. Till next time, wayward movie watchers, we love you.
We love you.
Hey.